Hello, and thank you for inviting me to the launch event of Equity in Higher Education. I am delighted to participate and extend my heartfelt congratulations to the authors Penny Burke and Matt Lamb for this remarkable achievement. When I was first asked to write an endorsement for this book, I was particularly captivated by its subtitle, Time for Social Justice Praxis. I fully support this urgent call to action. Despite extensive discussions, narratives, and discourses on equity, the real challenge often lies in its implementation, translating theory into practice on a global scale where things frequently fall short. Having dedicated my research career to exploring genealogies in education and beyond, I was particularly intrigued by how the authors of this book freeze and problematize the present by rethinking its historical context. However, what stands out most is their focus on the future and their examination of the university's role in today's world. In this context, I view the book as a genealogical praxis par excellence. It interrogates the present of higher education, critiques its historical formations, and reimagines its futures. By doing so, it also serves as an archive of doing things differently, forcefully demonstrating that alternative worlds and practices remain possible even in the most challenging times. Foucauldian genealogies have become, as we know, a rich epistemological field, intertwining theory and method to unearth marginalized narratives, deconstruct myths, and generate new minor knowledges. It is fitting then that this book places methodological considerations at its core, presenting them not as fixed formulas, but as a toolbox for imaginative use. Consequently, this book serves both as an archive and a toolbox, inviting us to engage with it actively in our everyday practices. To conclude, I want to offer a wish we use in Greece for a newly published book. Bon voyage to a book that has just sailed. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Vincent Carpentier from UCL Institute of Education, London. It's great pleasure for me to be able to say a few words about the new book from Penny Jane Burke and Matt Lamb called Equity in Higher Education, Time for Social Justice Praxis. So there are many reasons, for buying and reading this book, so I'm not going to go to list all of them, but I'm just going to give you like a few reflection of what I thought, from my point of view, it brings. First, it's very important that this book offers a very thorough reflection on widening participation and this idea of widening participation being there not to fix the system but to transform the system and to go beyond the deficit agenda or deficit model of widening higher education, to think about what is higher education and to critique the contemporary form of neoliberal higher education. The key aspect of that book is also based on the work the authors did with the Centre of Excellence for Equity in Higher Education at the University of Newcastle, Australia, to think about the links between theory, policy, and practice in some ways. So this idea of praxis as defined as reflection for transformation is very important to turn, what they have developed as a framework into something that actually implement change in some ways and transformation. And they develop this idea of transformative equity praxis, which I think is really fruitful, productive, and makes you think a lot about wherever you are in the higher education system, about your practice and what you're doing. They offer some case studies which are really interesting on pedagogy, but also evaluation. So, for this reason, I think it's a very important book. The other aspect is this book has the potential to be very international. It doesn't speak about a single country. It makes people think about higher education in general, but also across different HE systems. So for all this reason, I'm going to use definitely that book for my research. It's going to be on the reading list of all my modules and program, and I'm sure a student will, engage with the book fully and get a lot from it. So congratulations, Penny, Jane, and Matt, and it was nice to talk to you. Bye-bye.
Building on the University of Newcastle's proud social justice and equity commitment and agenda, CHE has brought new insights, new theoretical lenses, and a more ethical methodology for understanding the purpose and impact of this work. CHE provides a framework to amplify practitioner wisdom and the deeply felt lived experience of higher education. The framework brings researchers, practitioners, students, policymakers, and administrators together in an ongoing cycle of reflexive learning and understanding. Drawing on this, Equity in Higher Education, Time for Social Justice practice provides practitioners with a language and a robust research base to challenge education leaders to do better, to move beyond the status quo, and to deeply embed equity as a core part of institutions rather than an add-on, to transform post-secondary education for all.
Hi, everyone. I'm so honoured to be asked to provide some reflections today. I've had the pleasure of working with Penny and Matt for so many years, and over that time have been so enriched and inspired in doing so. So thank you for this, Penny and Matt. Thank you also for the enrichment through this particular new publication. It is such a fantastic opportunity to be able to gain the insights from such sophisticated thinking and tools, illuminated through the research. For me, in my role as Director of the Pathways and Academic Learning Support for all students at the University of Newcastle. So I'm Anna Bennett. I lead the Pathways and Academic Learning Support Centre, or PALS for short, as the acronym, at the University of Newcastle. Reading this book, it enables me to gain the space and the time to reflect, to understand deeper and further, and to improve all that we do. So refer to these pathways in the book and the pedagogical commitments and educational philosophy we have embedded for 50 years here, which is deeply rooted in the methodologies they discuss, which is so important and powerful for equitable forms of education. The research and the shared insights here in this book are incredibly valuable in so many diverse ways. The opportunities they provide for us to apply concepts, the ideas, and the new ways of thinking this book produces are so many and plentiful. The book is such great value in this way for providing so much within its pages, so much in terms of the breadth and the depth of each of the issues discussed and the elements illuminated. Of particular interest to me is the work on widening participation with the work from Penny and Matt over so many years. And as we know, such a deep commitment to the right to higher education. Having the opportunity to connect our work in higher education across the globe, and these are the tools that are provided in this book, enriches what we can do not only now, but into the future. It gives us inspiration and the critical tools to sustain and to keep growing this work, to keep being creative, inventive, and building this through conceptual frameworks and approaches. In our pathways and academic learning support here at the University of Newcastle's, we so deeply value and appreciate that there needs to be a striving for the emancipation of education itself from the notion of one size fits all, to valuing the diversity of students, the student cohorts, of the knowledges and the experiences that they bring and that we can build from. So this is to move from a restricted and monoculturally focused teleology or singular duty to learn agenda, as they talk about, and instead to value learning of the ongoing right to learn in high quality contexts, and that can be done so richly throughout a person's life. This critical praxis, reflection, action in an ongoing cycle into the future is so important in terms of the ways that we can connect our concepts, theory, knowledge, and practice to make the familiar strange, as they say, strange enough, arbitrary seeming enough, rethinkable enough to help deconstruct and reconstruct the conceptualizations guiding our practice. This is such exciting work, and it's such a pleasure to read. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you so much for listening.
Hello, Penny and Matt. Thank you for inviting me to comment on your book and to consider its value and how it resonates with my work. I particularly valued how strongly rooted your framework and your argument for it is in the history of higher education and critical scholarship on the purpose of universities. Your theorization and poems framework resonated with two areas of my work. One is obviously the work we are mutually involved in and which based on your framework. At Bath, we found it extremely valuable in guiding our work on developing equity practices from the ground up with STEM faculty. And we've also been working with colleagues at Cairo University in Egypt who've also been using the similar framework. Your book's really helpful in providing a very clear, deep and thoughtful reflection on the purpose of the approach of generating the transformative spaces we've aimed to develop alongside you, which is wonderful. I'm sure this approach will serve us well as we move forward and it will resonate with any future partners we develop. It's also chimed with my current efforts to think through intersection gender injustices in a longitudinal study of social science and humanities academics, has features which I aspire to incorporate into my own work in critical realism and that I value. I like the post-Freirean feminist decolonial stance to critical hope taken. I'm drawn to the way by you offer steps that can be taken to address injustices without shirking away from the size of the task and the difficulties and intransigencies that disrupt efforts to generate justice. I value the way you use critical scholarship and feminist perspectives without valorizing any academic discipline or perspective as being free from the social and historical structures embedded within them and that make them complicit to generating injustices, which is a potential problem, but there are also many opportunities. I like your ambitions to acknowledge the multiplicity of powers that operate for and against social justice and fair universities, and see within them the opportunities for change and the possibilities for widening access and addressing injustices. I appreciate the way you see this marginalized agenda of generating equity as offering the hope for universities in terms of them being able to develop equitable contexts. I also like this ambition for your universities, which you you articulate in your book very well, so I'm just quoting. Make the familiar strange enough, arbitrary seeming enough, rethinkable enough to help deconstruct and reconstruct the conceptualizations guiding hegemonic forms of practice. I think this is a really valuable thing that one should aspire to. And it's kind of critical to this other sentence, which again I just read from your text. Generating different imaginaries, diverse spaces of debate, new possibilities of action and reflection, and important dynamics in the pursuit of time for social justice practice. And I think this is a really nice idea and a valuable idea that universities and other higher education establishments should develop time for social justice practice. And thank you for your book, really, is all I want to say. I've gone on for too long. I wish you every success with it. I'm sure anyone interested in working in university, who works in universities and are interested in their future, should be reading your work. So I wish you very well with it.
This book, Equity in Higher Education, Time for Social Justice Praxis, is very timely as it reassesses the role and purpose of higher education in society, and this is relevant across the globe, including Ghana. Ghana education systems are in a marriage of confusion with deep-seated inequalities framed with neoliberal images. And as we are well aware, education and equity are integral parts of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. However, with the emphasis of neoliberal ideologies, key and critical concepts in higher education, including equity and social justice, have been marginalized, and the idea of meritocracy centralized. In Ghana, similar to many contexts, widening of participation in university education lacks inclusivity in terms of gender, class, or geographic location. Far from addressing inequalities in access to university education, the dynamics shaping the provision of university education in Ghana to a higher extent exclude marginalized social groups such as women and the poor. The book provides both practical and theoretical tools that could be highly beneficial in guiding reforms in Ghanaian higher education, particularly in fostering inclusivity and social justice. By adapting these tools, Ghanaian higher education could take a more transformative and inclusive approach, ensuring that all students have equitable access and opportunities to succeed, aligning with broader national development goals. One of the tools emphasized in the book is the Praxis approach to research, which is reflected in the GBV programs, which is a key project located in the UNESCO Chair in Equity, Social Justice, and Higher Education. Addressing gender-based violence will indeed be a potent tool to address gender inequality regarding access and participation. Thank you once again, Professor Penny Jane-Bach and Dr. Matt Lamb and all staff at CIHI for this wonderful book.
Hello. A short note of congratulations to my esteemed colleagues, Professor Penny Jane-Burke and Dr. Matt Lamb, on publication of Equity in Higher Education, Time for Social Justice Praxis. My name is Richard Watermeyer, and I'm a sociologist and professor of higher education and co-director of the Centre for Higher Education Transformations at the University of Bristol, here in the United Kingdom. It is my great delight and honour to endorse this milestone book, which connects on so many different levels with our own programme of future imagining and being for higher education that we are engaged with at Bristol. Penny and Matt have together produced a work of essential reading for those trying to make sense of and seeking remediation for the pervasively egregious, injurious, and persistently stubborn structural inequalities, power abuses, and social inequities that afflict our university communities, and which weaken their contribution in the advocacy and defence of social justice. In this major tome, Penny and Matt elucidate new multidimensional pathways in the navigation and acculturation of critical social justice and pedagogical praxis as indispensable correctives to higher education's seemingly inexorable crisis of identity, value, and mission, and as indivisible from the restitution of an ethics of care across our institutions and the disarmament of hegemonic technologies that have affected the precarization of university communities with such devastation. Penny and Matt challenge us to address with honesty, humility, bravery, and adventure what our universities stand for, and how we can imagine and bring into being an equitable settlement for higher education participation, and the right to education that resists and defeats the paralysis of deficit imaginaries and establishes the fruit of hope. Qualifications of being timely, relevant, and necessary are often dispensed in accolades of scholarly work, but in this instance they could not be more apt nor deserved. Congratulations to you both, and my sincerest wishes for the book's every success.